There we go. So all of the other panelists will need to make sure their mics and cameras are on again. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our panel. My name is Leslie. I write as Penelope, and this is the Breaking Borders, Black Representation in Speculative Fiction panel at Virtuous Con. And I'm really excited to be here. We have an all-star panel with us today. We're super fortunate to have these people. Like I said, I'm Penelope. I write epic fantasy. My epic fantasy series, Earthsinger Chronicles, the first book is Song of Blood and Stone. And I'm also a podcaster, and I'll be moderating the panel. And I want to go around and let everyone introduce themselves. So I'm going to go on my screen clockwise. So let's start with Mellow Brown.
How you doing? Mellow Brown. I am a screenwriter. I've written on shows American Gods. There's another show coming up on Apple TV Plus that is about to be announced soon. And currently I am writing Blade Runner Origins for Titan Comics to basically create an origin story for that entire franchise. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Very cool. Next we have Tananarive.
Hi, my name is Tananarive Due. I am an author and a screenwriter, just starting out. I'm the executive producer of Shudder's Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror, and they just announced they're going to have a Black horror series coming up on Shudder. So one of my stories is adapted for that, and Steve and I will be collaborating to do that. And I'll let you talk about that.
Oh. As soon as you give me permission to speak.
Yeah, no.
Oh, should I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Steve Barnes, and I'm a novelist and television writer. I've written for Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, Stargate, Andromeda, stuff like that. And this has been, my life for a very long time. So it's really fun to watch this sort of gathering of the clans. It's not an experience I would have had earlier in my life. It's just great.
Well, I tried to give him the Twilight Zone one we just did last year. We just did an episode for season 2 of the Twilight Zone on CBS All Access.
Awesome. Congratulations to both of you guys.
Thank you.
And Tonia.
I am Tonia Ransom. I'm the creator and executive producer of Nightlight, a horror podcast that features creepy tales written by Black writers from all over the world. Thank you, Tananarive. I'm also a horror writer. My debut novella came out in December of last year, and I am hopefully soon to be a screenwriter as well.
Yay. So yeah, we have a lot of representation from different aspects of media, which is actually really cool. So the first question, I actually received an email from an aspiring writer who was asking, she's working on her first book, and she's in some Black writing groups. And so she's writing like fantasy races. It's a epic fantasy book, and was feeling, in her words, shamed about not writing Black characters. So I wanted to ask all of you if you felt that Black creators have a responsibility to write or to present Black characters or write with a Black audience in mind.
I think that any artist has a responsibility to create stuff that they themselves would want to watch or read. That is their primary responsibility, to express themselves honestly. There are people who are political. There are others who are just philosophical. You have, no one owns your heart. However, those who do choose to create for a specific audience that has been underserved have my respect.
Yeah, when I first started writing seriously in college, I drifted away from writing Black characters to writing white characters without even making a conscious decision. And I think that's the most dangerous aspect. If I can use the word dangerous, I was starting to mute and bury myself without anyone telling me to, and without even thinking about it. And it was actually a conscious act for me to write Black characters. So I would say it's not a matter of shame. It's a matter of, are you expressing your true self? Are you expressing who you would want to express if you weren't thinking about the marketing, because the marketing may not work in your favor. So it may actually be more in your favor to write something that's more authentic to your own experience and more unique rather than what they're already reading.
Yeah, on a personal side. Oh, go for it, Tonia. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Go ahead, Mellow.
Oh, no,
you got the cooler name. You got to go.
No, personally, I've always written, one thing you learn in screenwriting is that write what you know, write what you're feeling at that moment. And a lot of what I'm feeling regularly are pretty Black experiences. And that's usually contributed to me writing a lot of stories in that fashion and overall from that narrative. But if I were to look at different perspectives or anything like that, I also want to go to a place of authenticity. If I'm not consulting anyone from any other particular area in terms of like, is this like, like as a woman of color, is this genuine to how you feel? Is this character speaking to something that feels legitimate? And I usually go towards that area, because otherwise, like if your characters don't feel genuine, then I usually don't even continue with going on that path in the story.
Tonia?
I think that for me, well, for every writer, I think every writer has a responsibility to write their own experience and their own perspective and share their worldview with their readers, their viewers, etc. But that said, one of the reasons that I started Nightlight was because a report came out from Fireside Fiction about the number of authors that were published, short stories specifically, and then their demographics. And it was something like 2.5% were published by Black writers. And I belong to a group of all Black writers. And we got to talking about this report saying, okay, well, when you get a personalized rejection, what kind of rejections are you getting? And the thing that people were hearing were, outside of story structure issues, was this story was too Black, this story wasn't Black enough. And some of them heard it about the same story from two different places. So even though I think we have a responsibility to share our experience, I think that Hollywood, publishing, all of these gatekeepers have a responsibility to not assign a certain level of Blackness or gayness or whatever the case, that they're looking for in a story. They should be accepting the stories as is, as this is my experience as a person in this world, regardless of what groups you might belong to. I think, for me at least, one of the things that I strive to do with my podcast is show that there's a wide variety of stories that we as Black writers tell. Some of them are very Black stories. Some of them aren't Black at all. Like, it's just a passing mention that one of the characters has brown skin, and that's it. And it doesn't read like a Black story. And I want to showcase that although we as writers share our experiences, we are more than our experience as a Black person or as a gay person or as a Muslim person, etc.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the idea of like something can read as a Black story, like what does that mean? Because I feel like everyone has responded to that feedback of, oh, it's not Black enough or it's too Black. And what does that even mean? Especially when you're in a marketplace, when you're doing this professionally. So do you feel like this changes in like a work for hire situation? Like for those of you who are working in media where it's not your idea, you've been hired by a television show or a network, or you're writing books in another IP world. Do you feel that sort of same responsibility, or like how is that when you're dealing with someone else's IP?
I could actually speak to that in regards to working on like Blade Runner right now. Like the first Blade Runner in the franchise now is African American, and a lot of that is heavy because the first thing I actually went into the franchise asking, I was like, hey, aren't Blade Runners technically slave catchers? Isn't that something that we should be talking about? And a lot of that is going to deal with the fact that like there's a challenge of getting us to root for this character and having him be involved with such like kind of like heavy, like, like it's he starts off as an LAPD officer going into slave catching. So there's already an issue there to define him as a character and to define what the franchise is in a brand new way, and kind of dig into why we should ever root for these characters, why we should even think about what we're going to discuss going forward or anything like that. That is going to be pulling from a certain place. And it's going to be pulling from experiences that we have that are unique, that we may not know, or other people may not know, a part of our culture as to the reason why we would agree to certain things, or things that we're forced into in terms of different types of situations. And a lot of that is just, it's all heavy in context is the best way I could answer that question.
And just another follow-up for that show, are you the only Black person in the writer's room?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a perspective they might not have had without you being there. Stephen,
Yeah, I used to fantasize back when Sleepy Hollow was on the air about being in the writer's room for that show. A lot of you were on Twitter understand how frustrated we were to see Nicole Behari's character so sidelined, to see the history itself not really being engaged with. Like, what would she say to Thomas Jefferson's hologram? Hello. And I know there were Black writers in and out of that show. I think often they were probably also the only one in the room, and you just don't have the backup. You don't have the power. Do you have to be a historian to work on the show? Well, apparently it would help. So if I had been on the show, I like to think I would have tried to bring that fire, you know, fighting up against the powers that be to make it more focused on Nicole Behari's character, to really think about the premise and what it would be like for a Black woman to be walking down a street, you know, in the 1700s or whatever. But at the same time, we don't want to feel that we're brought in only to do that, right? So it's a real balancing act. We have to have the freedom to have full humanity, but often if we don't bring the specificity to the Blackness of a character, who will? Right.
I think that creators right now have a wonderful opportunity that did not exist a generation ago. You have to think about a bunch of different things. You have to think about the pure art of the thing, the expression of self. You have to think about what impact you want it to have on the audience. And some of that impact will be psychological, some will be social. You also have to think about moving your career forward and creating a situation where others will be able to come in and, you know, you're finding the rocks under the water, as it were. When you're a pioneer, you get arrows in the butt. It's just the way. And sometimes you take one for the team. You know, you keep your mouth shut. But once again, that comment, although it is universal for any actors who are working in an arena where you're asking other people to give you their money for it, it is not as true today as once it was. I've done work for hire where I had no control whatsoever over the casting of the situation, except for maybe very, very minor characters. And I looked at this as, okay, I'm just going to have to connect with their humanity. And I'm just going to play for position here. If I can do this successfully, I will get to another position where I will be able to go a little bit more deeply into it. And have there been disappointments in connection with that? Have there been times when I felt used? Absolutely. But I think about the amount of freedom that I have in my life above my father, who sang with Nat King Cole and could not stay in hotels where he could perform. So there is a degree to which I understand that my job is to make it easier for the people coming up after me. And this is a long game. This is a long game. And does it hurt? And have I been accused of things? And has that hurt me? Of course it has, but it's okay, because this is the game, you know, and we want to express ourselves. We want to move things forward. We're standing on the shoulders of people who had not a fraction of the opportunities that we had and stood tall anyway. So it's, you know, can I find a way to find joy in my life, to speak truth here, even if there are people say, well, we can't make this character Black. We can't talk about this. We can't talk about that. Your only option is not to leave the room. And your only option is not to simply roll over. It is to find a way to be honest and useful and courageous. And sometimes that involves staying more silent than I felt comfortable with. And I am very, very, it delights me to be in the company of brothers and sisters who are doing what you guys are doing and bringing the fire, bringing the heat. This is your time. I mean, this is all of our time, but it is real that sometimes you have to take one for the team.
Absolutely. No, I definitely respect that. That's very powerful. Thank you. In talking about the representation, the idea of stereotypes comes up. And since stereotypes historically have some basis in reality at some point, do you ever find, or do you ever believe that there is a place for a more stereotypical view of, say, Black people or any marginalized people in the portrayal of those characters? Can it be used to flip the script in some way?
I think so. You know, you have to be really careful with it, though. You know, you've got to have the skill and the talent to be able to take that stereotype and examine it properly. And, you know, it's not just you, you know, when you're writing for TV, for instance, you know, you're not the only writer in the room. So, you know, I'm a little more hesitant, you know, if I'm the only Black writer in a room, to say, let's face this stereotype here and let's, you know, examine it, because, you know, one, as a new person in this field, that, you know, people aren't going to listen to me the way they're going to listen to someone who's been in this business for 10 years. Right. So, you know, like what Stephen was saying is we have to fight, right? But we're going to lose a lot of those battles, especially when you don't have the pull.
Mhm.
So I would be really reluctant to do that at this point in my career, because I don't have the pull to go to these people that are in the room with me and say, no, we're doing this wrong. This is going to feed into the stereotype rather than causing people to examine their own stereotype.
Yeah, you know, this is a really interesting question, because you really almost have to ask, why is this character Black? If the project wasn't Black created, very often a character is described as Black to fulfill some sort of like diversity desire on the part of the executives, or on the creative side to fulfill a trope. I was just very disappointed to watch the pilot of a series on Amazon. I thought I could binge. And then it's set in New Orleans. And then at the end, they killed off this Black girl as a sacrificial Negro, basically to raise the stakes for the white protagonist and create mystery. This girl could have been a co-lead, you know, in terms of her talent and presence in this pilot. And very often when there's a description of a character as Black in a script, it's because they want us to be what Blackness looks like to them. It looks like sassiness. It looks like, oh, you're scared, so you're the comic relief. If we're talking about horror, you're here to fulfill this trope. So now the part of stereotypes that is just comfort food and familiarity, creating characters who feel like you could meet them at the barbecue. You know, some stereotypes are based in reality. So yeah, I might have a protagonist say, girl, come on. Is that stereotypical? That's also how I talk to my friends, you know? So we're creating a script now where we're trying to turn some of these tropes on their head, right? So the comic relief guy will have a moment of heroism. A woman who seems like she's going to be set up to be the sacrifice, if this were a white-made film, is not going to die. So you can play around those edges too.
You know, I think it depends on what the stereotype is. Stereotypes, as you implied, exist because there is some truth connected with them. The problem is not, let's say, old racist, well, maybe racist, or stereotypical radio show, Amos and Andy, you know, television show, radio show. There was nothing wrong with Amos and Andy that was not also wrong with Abbott and Costello. But the trouble is that there were balancing images for Abbott and Costello. There was Marcus Welby, MD, and there was John Wayne, and there's this, there's that. So it's a circle, okay? And along that circle, you have, it's not stereotypes, you have archetypes. All these different types of people, courageous and successful and unsuccessful and lazy and hardworking and brilliant and stupid. As long as you have the full circle, stereotypes are fine, archetypes are fine. But we've been allowed to be a fragment of that circle, okay? And that's what we have to fight against. And any individual show does not have the responsibility to present a fully rounded picture. But if you can't step back and take a look at the season or what's coming out in the course of a year and say, okay, I see the circle of reality here. I see us being represented in all these different ways. So I can have this character who's a clown. Doesn't matter, because on this other network over here, you have a character who is brilliant and brave, and it's wonderful. It's difficult because when you run into stereotypes that are comforting images of what the majority wants to see, that wants to believe about what we are, about what a particular group is, sometimes these people can be reached. Sometimes you can actually talk to them. You can actually show them. You know, I could show people that Black men did not have sex in any movie that earned over $100 million domestic until 2015 in Creed. Okay. And when you can show someone that statistic and show them, just find it, it's not there. They say, well, Denzel must have. Will Smith? No, nobody. Nobody, not once. When you can prove it to them, sometimes a little light goes on in their head. Not everyone is our enemy. Some of them are just asleep. Some of them just don't get it. And when you can wake them up, at times they'll kind of say, oh, okay, well, what can we do about that? Other times, you better keep your opinion to yourself because you're not in the room with a friend. You're in the room with someone who smiles in your face because they can use you. And you have to be able to differentiate between people who are potential allies and people who are enemies who can write you checks.
Ooh. Dang.
Right?
Mellow, did you have anything to add?
Before you follow that.
I'm glad I went first on that one.
The question I'm always going to ask if somebody I'm always going to call it a stereotype whenever I'm in a writer's room, and then B, it's always going to be a question of, do we ever see this character at home? And that's the question that we always need to ask within every single part of it. It's because there's two different types of stereotypes. You have like you're Sidney Poitier and like Guess Who's Coming Home for Dinner, where he has to be the perfect Negro in order to even be presented in this comedy about him meeting this white family. And then you have the opposite where they expect us to be, just shucking and whatnot. But and the big difference there, in order to kind of like alleviate both problems, is that if we're really good at our craft, we have gone home with this character. We have explained the things that happen in their lives that have led them to have these characteristics and the things about their personality. And you get to a point where you have your viewer watching this character and they're just like, no, he acts like this because this is what he needs to be. It's even the entire concept of The Wire. Everybody is humanized by the end of it, where you just like, hey, don't talk about like everybody that's on like cocaine and stuff like that. Like they're like that for a reason. Like I went home with them. I've seen what they're going through. It's a cycle that they can't escape. Like the things that they're saying are like instrumental. Like it's like institutionalized. I'm trying to say. And so yeah, it's if you ever have like a stereotype like that, it's always, are you going home with that character?
That's important.
Yeah.
There's a question in the Q&A. It has but so being the only person of color in the room, how do you just say no, this won't work, or someone like me would never do or say this?
You say that. I mean, seriously, at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself. There are times when it's like it's a small thing and you let it go because you're playing the long game. But there are other times when you ask yourself, if my son, my daughter, my father, my mother watched me right now, what do my children think? Would my children think about this? What would my ancestors think about this? There are times to get up and walk away, and there are times to stay and fight, even if you lose. And that's an art. Life is an art, not a science, and nobody can tell you, but ultimately you have to live with yourself.
I have to admit, I haven't had the experience of saying, okay, that's it, I quit. Even though in my head, when I was an imaginary writer for Sleepy Hollow, it happened many times. But I do think that self-care comes first. You really do have to invest yourself emotionally to work on a show, any kind of a long-term project, and you care about it and you want it to succeed. A lot of us are getting opportunities now to staff that we never could have dreamed of, being yanked up out of academia. I know of someone who got a first-time opportunity to staff, and we all celebrated on Twitter. And then a few weeks later, it was like, ooh, I had to let that go because it wasn't, it was a toxic room for her. It was a toxic experience, and life is short. There's already a lot of stress right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. So sometimes, as golden as an opportunity is, I think a lot more of us can have faith that it won't be the only one, that another one is coming around the corner, probably a better one around the corner, if we have the courage to let go of something that isn't working.
Money doesn't help you if you spend a lot of it helping you forget how you earned it.
I don't know. Maybe Mellow could speak to this. I don't know if you've ever been in a toxic room.
I love what you said about going home with the Mellow. That's great.
You're going to ask me a toxic room question. No, what was it? It's primarily. So I've had both the fortunateness and unfortunateness of working in like larger franchises, and like I said, even going into the one that I'm working in now, I'm pointing out the slavery in this one. If I was even to go into Star Wars and it's just like let's do some Jedi stuff, I'm like, are Jedi kind of fascists? I've never seen them arrest somebody. They usually just go in and slice everything up, you know. And like, it's questions in regards to basically just, are we servicing the story by letting this stereotype happen? Because if that's the case, I kind of want to write around exactly what you're talking about. And like, if we added something that actually had some character context, then maybe it'll be a little bit better. And usually that's going to eliminate the stereotype, because usually that's a nice way of challenging somebody. Is just like, are you just being a bad writer right now? You want to go home at 5 o'clock, or do you want to make a good thing? You know? So that's usually how I handle that in our writers' room.
There's another question about why we put so much energy into getting a seat at the table instead of directing those efforts into erecting our own dining hall. And I'll ask Tonia first, since you've created a podcast, you created a space for people to tell their stories. That's something that you put energy into. Is that one of the reasons, as opposed to trying to find a seat at the table, at someone else's table, creating your own?
You know, I heard about a lot of other people's experiences in publishing in particular. And I just decided early on that I wanted to opt out of that. I didn't want anything to do with that. You know, I self-published my novella as well, because I'm not interested in playing that particular game for literature in and of itself. Now, TV, movies, that's a different story. Like, I'll play that game. You know, so yeah, I think that we have to do both. Honestly, I think that you do have to create your own spaces, but there are places where you have to play the game, and you have to be prepared to play that game. You have to go in there with your eyes wide open, know what you're getting into, you know, do your research, talk to people who have been there, so that very little takes you by surprise when the time does come that you're playing in someone else's pool, so to speak. But I think as Black creators, we are better serviced by creating our own opportunities where it's possible to create our own opportunities. And right now that's really difficult to do in TV and film, just because of the cost that's involved in it and the gatekeepers that are there. You know, publishing has had its revolution. You know, there's podcasting, which is, you know, very much an indie type platform. So it's easy to create your own dining hall in those spaces, but TV and film is completely different. It's, you know, that's not a place that you can really create your own dining hall right now anyway.
This is a really interesting question, and I have so many things to say about it. I told my agent once when he asked about a job, I don't want to be the only Black person in the room, especially not working on a cop show, which was what was being suggested. And you know, but then again, I just did end up in a situation where I was part of a team. It was sort of an informal room where I was the only Black person, and it worked out fine. And the reason I did that was for the experience, frankly, because right now I'm having opportunities, and we're having opportunities that we haven't had in the 22 years of our marriage, that I haven't had since I've been publishing, since 1995. And I didn't want to be putting together a room before I'd had a chance to work in one. You know what I mean? I want to make my mistakes on someone else's show and have some wisdom coming into one that I might one day be able to create or be able to staff. And it was really, really powerful for us. My mother got sick some years ago, and we moved to Atlanta for 3 years, which was very important because it took the emphasis off of pitching and sitting in traffic and going to all those meetings to that sort of entrepreneurial spirit that independent filmmakers had in Atlanta. And I was teaching at Spelman, and I had a Black science fiction film festival. I was like, well, I can make a short with my iPhone, as a matter of fact, which I did. It is called Lost, and it's on YouTube. It's not great, but the point is, we have so many platforms now. Our smartphones are literally cameras that are film worthy in some cases. So we have great opportunities to make our own tables, but sometimes we do have to get experience at the feet of people who have come before and are more experienced, and break barriers, even though we're sick of pioneering, but sometimes you do have to pioneer to learn and bring the lessons back.
Some of this is similar to the question of publishing your own books, being self-published. If you publish your own books, you're not an author. You're an author and a publisher and an editor and a promoter and a marketer and a distributor. there are people who have a taste for holding all those roles, and they can succeed brilliantly. But some people just want to write, or just want to market, or just want to edit, or. So I think that if you're gonna do it yourself, understand you're going to be wearing many hats. So and that's okay, because you can learn those things. But I think that right now there is more opportunity to create non-standard product and get it to the market. For instance, YouTube is a great level, and there are plenty of people who put stuff on YouTube and gotten deals. A guy named Dove Simons, if you write that, DOVSIMONS, has something called a 3-day film school. And he talks about how do you get to doing a $50 million movie. You get to doing a $50 million movie by doing a $5 million movie. How do you do that? By doing a $500,000 movie. How do you do that? By doing a $50,000 movie, by doing a $5,000 movie, by doing a $500 movie, and ultimately a $50 movie. You write a one-person, one act play, and you film it on an iPhone, and you edit it using the free software. Yeah, using iMovie. And if you do that, then you can take it to your investors and say, listen, I want to do a $500 one. And you can see how far up that cataract you can get. How far can you get? Do you have the talent to write, direct, produce, all of those different things? If not, can you get together with friends who have the skills that you don't have? Now you're talking about building a little studio from scratch. You simply can't expect to go to somebody and say, cut me a check for $500,000 or $5 million or whatever it is, and not have that person say, I want you to do something with that movie that will move my emotions. When you ask for somebody's money, they have the right to tell you some things about what you're going to do. So if it is possible for people to get around that now because of the internet.
Crowdfunding.
We crowdfunded our little movie. It worked just fine. And because of that, we got the experience. We've got the experience of writing dialogue and seeing it in people's mouths. And I think that it allowed us to leverage ourselves. When we came back to California from Atlanta, we were in a slightly different position than we had been when we went there. And I think that led to her getting the executive producer gig at Shudder. It led to other things, to being able to have conversations with people and understand, because if you do a $5,000 movie, you are touching on all the basic things that somebody who makes a $100 million movie is doing in very simple form. You will understand things better than you understood it before. You'll have a deeper appreciation, and you'll have an easier time understanding what people that you're dealing with are being honest with you and respectful to you, because you understand the game, even if only at a very small level.
Yeah, on my end, in regards to that, I even say don't even try to jump into something that's like a franchise or anything like that, unless there's already something that you personally want to make on your own. You need that special thing where you get home where you just like, look, I had to put up with a lot of stuff in the room or anything like that, but this is all like money that I can use to make something dope for us. This is something that I'll be able to make. I'll be able to make my Get Out. I'll be able to make like my own franchise and going forward. And then it'll be something just really dope from there onwards, instead of just course correcting somebody else's story and big corporation franchise from there. So I always feel like like this year I'm even like taking money from other franchises that I've done, and I'm just like, I just want to release my own comic book. I just want to release I got like my own pitches that I want to put out there. They usually end up with people like, wow, this pitch is really dope. Would you like to write a reboot of this franchise and use that idea for it? And sometimes it's like, yeah, I guess, because you have bills. But what you really are doing is you're taking that little hit and you're making your real dope thing while you're doing the other thing at the same time. So that would be my advice in that regards.
Yeah, I agree. Doing both is important. Like for me, I did start out as a self-published author, and then St. Martin's Press came to me to republish my series. And I thought that was a good opportunity because I can reach so many people. But yeah, I'm doing all of the things. I'm writing, I'm marketing, I'm buying ads, I'm learning all of these skills to do everything. And I would really rather just write, but I understand I have to learn all these things if I want people to read what I'm writing. And so it made sense to me to see if St. Martin's Press could do something for me, a traditional publisher, put me in bookstores. Lots of opportunities come from being traditionally published that you can't get or that are extremely difficult to get when you're self-published. And then still doing your own thing, because I'm hybrid now. So I'm doing both and using that to build my audience so that whenever in the future I self-publish again, I have used, Macmillan as a way to, and their money and whatever they were doing for me to bring an audience to me. So I do think it's important to do both and to kind of go back and forth, that when you're frustrated with like Hollywood, New York, whatever the entity is that is controlling everything, go back, work on your own thing. And then when that gets frustrating, because I don't want to learn how to make Facebook ads when they change the algorithm for the 100th time, go back to have someone else find the ads for you. And then maybe you can forge a career like that.
But if you have done your own ads, then when you talk to somebody who is a professional at ads, you speak their language. And it's easier for you to determine whether or not they know what they're doing. Because even at that most basic level, you're not talking Chinese. You're not talking foreign language, okay? You're saying, I'm not good at this thing, but I understand the principles of the thing. That's going to make it much easier for you to find somebody who's good.
And really quickly, I just want to add, I think what's coming up for all of us here is that we have to empower ourselves as much as possible. You need as many weapons as you feel comfortable carrying. I didn't want to learn screenwriting. When I was in college, I saw my friends making their films, spending 2 hours getting the lighting right. I was like, ooh, that doesn't look like fun. But as my work was getting optioned and it would run into the wall at the script stage and I was excluded and not kept up to date, I thought, well, maybe I should learn how to write scripts so that I can be in the room even. And then there are limitations to that. So then it was like, well, let's write scripts that are not even adaptations. Let's start writing original scripts so we have full power over this story. And that was a huge turning point for us. So whether it's learning how to direct, learning how to market, learning how to self-publish, if you are a writer and you have any dream of seeing your work adapted to screen, please start studying screenwriting immediately.
And the way to study screenwriting is very simple. If you will watch one movie every week and read the script while you're watching it, at the end of a year, you'll know more about screenwriting than most people come out of MFA programs.
There is an app.
Read the script, watch the movie. You'll get it.
Yeah, there's something that I saw. I'll see if I can find the link before we go. There's a site where you can look at Netflix movies and they'll show the script side by side with the movie.
Whoa! Send us a link to that script. That site. I love that.
Yeah, I will look that
I feel
up.
like it's called like Script to Screen or something like that.
That's great.
That is beautiful information right there, because you have to. I look at script writing. It's a little bit like typing with chopsticks. That there's an additional level between your brain, your emotions, and what's on the page, which then has to create a framework for somebody to build. A script is not a movie; it's a framework for a movie.
Template.
So that a director and actors and and producers and like this can all come together and focus on what you're doing. I really got that the first time I did an episode of television. And watched, I think the budget was somewhere. I mean, it was somewhere around $1 million to pull it off. And watching all these people on the stage bringing this to life. This was a long time ago. I realized that my script was a critical part, but it was a small part. And that script had to inspire all those people who are paying their kids' ways through school, who are trying to keep food on the table, trying to find something emotionally satisfying to do with their lives. When you get this is a business with other creative people, and if you can dig the part of that is collaborative, if you can embrace that, then you have a chance. If you just want to be an artist, write short stories and publish them yourself, or send them. You don't have to make anybody happy except maybe one person who buys it. That editor. But if you're going to work in Hollywood, you have to care about hundreds of people being able to rest on your work and leverage your work to make something meaningful in their lives. That's quite an obligation.
So there is another question. In a culture now where gratification is expected to be instant, can you share your estimation of how many pitches have been picked up versus not picked up? Not exactly sure, but exactly. If anyone has any idea.
Yeah, I'm trying to connect the two ends of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question to answer.
No one
I
really
think.
knows.
Um,
Personally, how many pitches have you made that have been picked up versus not picked up?
I mean,
Yeah.
let me try to reshape the question into what I kind of think what they're saying in terms of what instant gratification and what would satisfy a producer while you're talking about a pitch. They're always going to be like, hey, what are the characters? Like if you give me the log line of what you like 3 lines to tell me what your show is about, but then you make those characters hit. Because when you're doing a pitch, your whole goal is recently had a successful one for a franchise, and my whole goal was like, I saw one of the producers in a Zoom chat like this, and I'm like, I'm gonna make her cry. I'm gonna get her so emotional, and she did, and it was because of things that happened with the characters. It was because of an emotional journey of where we were going, and then the action beats had context. It's just like if you were watching a Marvel movie, like nothing matters, like not a single punch matters if you don't care about both the person throwing the punch and at least one of the people who are getting hit by it. So if you can do that while you're doing a pitch, then you should be smooth. And like in terms of instant gratification, that's all. Characters never feel like instant gratification. It's something that you even build up while you're doing a pitch. So
a story I like to tell. Back in about 2007, 2008, we were pitching an adaptation of my novel, The Good House, going around town with Forrest Whitaker, who was attached to direct. Blair Underwood was one of the producers, a sister named Nia Hill, D'Angela Proctor, all of us Black. We went to a movie company, did our song and dance. It was a great pitch. We knew it was a great pitch. It was a popcorn pitch. They should have been eating popcorn. We sold that pitch in the room somewhere else. But that day, the executive said, oh, I love that pitch. Do the characters have to be Black? And this is something that, whether they said it out loud, was probably in the minds of everyone we were pitching to during that era. Frankly, between the 90s, when you had a horror renaissance and a lot of artists, Black artists were having a renaissance, then we had that Desert, and then we had Get Out and Black Panther and George Floyd Summer, and now all of a sudden everyone's interested in Blackness. So a lot of our pitches are much more effective now than they were then, having little to do with the pitches themselves, but the context and the times in which they were being pitched. I mean, we've gotten better. I know I've gotten a lot better at pitching, but I have no doubt in my mind that our traction was slowed by years because for a long time, Black Hollywood just was not interested in Black stories, and certainly not Black genre stories, because they didn't recognize that. They didn't even know what we were talking about when we said Black horror.
There's an implied question underneath that question that I thought it'd be a good idea to address. It is just important for artists to understand. And that is that if gratification is immediate and only maybe 1% of pitches ever go anywhere, then you're going to hear no infinitely more often than you're going to ever hear yes. And you're going to be disappointed more often than you're going to be thrilled. So the question, how do you stay in the game long enough to learn the things you need to learn to be able to be in the success column? You know, it's fail, 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 succeed, fail, 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 succeed, fail, fail, succeed. Hopefully, I mean, and that's an impossibly steep learning curve. So for artists as well as anyone else, find ways to take pleasure in the work itself every day. Every single day of your creative life, or just your life in general. I mean, the Dalai Lama said the meaning of life is to seek joy. So if you're going to survive in the field long enough to be successful in a career, you have to find ways to win every day. You have to have your own values, your own needs. You have to take care of yourself every single day. And you have to do things that delight that little creative child inside you. That's the part that has all the creativity, all the joy, that just wants to dance and be loved. And then you take that part of you out and you take it into Hollywood, where these people don't care about you. They don't care about you at all, okay? If you got hit by a bus walking away, they'd barely even say, oh, really? Did that happen? Interesting. Send the next one in. You have to care about yourself. You have to surround yourself with people who will nurture you, and you have to play that long game. You have to figure it's going to take time to get there. No matter how smart I am, no matter how hard I work, no matter what, it's going to take time. So how am I going to enjoy this ride? How am I going to do that? If you can answer that question, you've got a chance. Otherwise, Hollywood is going to chew you up and spit you out, and you'll never know what happened.
That is very good advice to nurture our creative and keep us going.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah. So how do you guys keep going in the face of the difficulty of the industry, whatever industry you're in?
You know, we've heard some crazy stuff from do the characters have to be black to does it have to be a tiger, when we've been meeting about the tiger for 3 months now and nobody said anything about the damn tiger, where you realize, oh, he just said that to basically blow us off. For me, it's realizing that everything I do related to screenwriting is a lesson. That's why it's exciting to me. I'm coming from prose, so every meeting is school. We had a series of pitch meetings with a bunch of people we don't know if we'll hear from again, over weeks last year. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that was a lesson in there somewhere. We learned something about pitching, we'll apply to the next pitch.
Yeah. Meditate, journal, get hugs, have fun.
Get sleep.
It's not plenty of rest. That's right.
It's
Exercise.
not worth to pull all-nighters, take
have
care,
goals
care
outside of screenwriting.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, repeat that in case someone missed it, Tonia.
Have goals outside of screenwriting or own stuff that you're working on for you. I've been doing a whole bunch of meetings for the last, since last summer. And, there's a whole lot of, radio silence. People are excited about stuff and then they're, silent. And then, or they say, oh, yeah, we're really interested in this, but not right now because of COVID. And, you're hearing all this stuff that, it's like, okay, well, it's not going anywhere yet. But if you have your own project to come back to that you have more control over, that is a way for you kind of to escape the cycle of pitching things that you don't have control over. Because even if it's a good pitch, even if you do a good job, there's still because of COVID, people aren't shooting a lot of things right now, or they're not shooting as much as they were before. So there are a lot of things that are just outside of your control. So you have to find something that's more inside of your control and direct your energy toward that so that you can see that project come to fruition.
Yeah, pretty much. It's exactly that. Even in the initiative of what you're doing when you're writing, it's got to be something that you actually want to, this is something dope that I want to see for myself, for example, I want to see grindhouse movies come back, but with Black people in it. And it's a weird thing, but at the same time, that's something that is not explored right now, and we could just start working on that. And I'm just, I want to lead the wave in regards to that. There's different areas where I'm just like, you know what? This doesn't exist right now. But at the same time, when I'm flipping through Netflix, I'm flipping through Amazon and all these different things, I wish that existed. And I'm in a position where I can at least start to help in that regards to making those things happen. And then that drives you forward, where you go into work and you're just I'm going to do the best thing that I can do today in regards to writing this script and building this show and pushing this franchise forward, and showing that if an investor were to come up to me tomorrow and say hey, I want to talk to you about the next thing you want to do, I'm like, Black Grindhouse movie, and it's all ready. It's all a cycle. Yeah, it's the best thing I can suggest is just find a thing that in your heart you're like, this is what I always wanted to see. It's not out there, but I'm gonna put it out there myself.
That sounds like really great advice. So we're basically at the end. I think pretty sure we have to get out of here in a minute. So this has been an awesome conversation. I've had a lot of fun and learned a lot. I would like to hear from everybody what is up next and where can we find out more about what you're doing? Yes, go ahead. You start.
I finished a novel called The Reformatory that will be published in 2022, and it's already been optioned for TV. So hopefully we'll be working on a pilot and pitching that.
We have a couple of graphic novels, including one that I did with Charles Johnson, the author of Middle Passage, that I'm really, really excited about. I've been trying to get it going for 10 years. And then there's a variety of short stories and a mix of work. Short stories I can control completely. Television and film work, other people need to be in the mix. So there's always something that little kid inside me can be excited about. Always.
Tonia.
I'm working on an audio drama, hopefully maybe a TV series, because I'm pitching it as a TV series too, called Afflicted. It's like Lovecraft Country meets True Blood. So I really want to see it out in the world. That's kind of, what Mellow was saying. That's my project, because it's about how I grew up, and it's about hoodoo and monsters and disasters. And I cannot wait to see it in the world.
Very cool. And Mellow.
I have Blade Runner Origins coming out actually this week, February 24th. Pick that up if you want to see Black people take over Cyberpunk. And then there's, well, let's just say that for now. There's some big secret, big projects on the way that I'm very excited for everybody to be able to see in the future.
Yay. So thank you all very, very much for being here. And we had a ton of questions we couldn't get to just for time, but I hope everyone had a good experience and a good Virtuous Con. I think
You did a great job, and I really, really enjoyed
Yes,
hearing
thank you for moderating.
Thank you so
meeting you
much.
no
Yeah.
problem.
Likewise.
We'll all stay in touch.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
All right, great.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Y'all are all invited to my birthday party.
Sweet.
We'll show up. Don't be surprised.
Virtual.
It's virtual. We'll talk.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.